Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Part 2. We are on Chapter 9, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Returns Home. Translation. The great sage Maitreya told Vidura, when the demigods were reassured by the personality of Godhead, they were freed from all fears, and after offering their obeisances, they returned to their heavenly planets. Then the Lord, who is non-different from the Sahasra Sirsha incarnation, got on the back of Garuda, who carried him to the Madhuvan forest to see his servant Dhruva. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The word Sahasra Sirsha refers to the personality of Godhead known as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. Although the Lord appeared as Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, he has been described here as Sahasra Sirsha Vishnu, because he is non-different from Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Bhagavatamrita, the Sahasra Sirsha personality of Godhead, who appeared at that time, was the incarnation known as Krishnagarbha. He created the planet known as Dhruvaloka for the habitation of Dhruva Maharaj. I think I'll just read one more small one. Text 2. The form of the Lord, which was brilliant like lightning, and which Dhruva Maharaj in his mature yogic process was fully absorbed in meditation, all of a sudden disappeared. Thus Dhruva was perturbed and his meditation broke. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally present, just as he had been seeing him in his heart. Wow. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Because of his mature position in yogic meditation, Dhruva Maharaj was constantly observing the form of the personality of Godhead within his heart. But all of a sudden, when the Supreme Personality disappeared from his heart, he thought that he had lost him. He was perturbed, but upon opening his eyes and breaking his meditation, he saw the same form of the Lord before him. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilocharena. A saintly person who has developed love of Godhead by devotional service always sees the Lord's transcendental form of Shyamasundar. The Shyamasundar form of the Lord within the heart of a devotee is not imagination. When a devotee becomes mature in his prosecution of devotional service, he sees eye to eye the same Shyamasundar he had thought of during the entire course of his devotional service. Since the Supreme Lord is absolute, the form within the heart of a devotee, the form in the temple, and the original form in Vaikuntha, Vrindavan Dham, are all the same. They are non-different from one another.
On those purports and what just happened, I was just reflecting how amazing that is. Prabhupada says that the Sahasra Sirsha Vishnu form is non-different from Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. So this is that Garbhodakshayi Vishnu who's lying in the ocean of, what's he lying in? Salt water, I think. Because there's Mahavishnu, and then there's Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and then there's Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. Kshirodakshayi Vishnu is lying in an ocean of milk. Garbhodakshayi, I think it's salt water. And
Yeah,
And Lord Brahma is coming out of his abdomen, sitting on the lotus flower, and he's creating all the planets and all the forms. He's the engineer for the universe, and that's the form of that came. He didn't leave being Sahasra Shirsha Vishnu. He didn't leave being Garbhodaksha Vishnu, but he manifested. Man, that is so awesome. If you think about that. Personally, it's just, what are we hearing here? I mean, it's like, wow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, what I loved, I've got such a simple mind, but when he said that the form within his heart disappeared, and then when he opened his eyes, the Lord was right there before him. Like they're all non-different. The form in the temple, that form in Vrindavan Dham. Yeah. So, but what made it very special was that in Prabhupada's purport, I mean, he explains everything so clear, like this is possible. This can happen. And he's so authoritative, or I don't know if that's the word, but I mean, you don't doubt it for 1 second. Somebody else reading this would not be able to say, oh, yeah, this is really so.
And like it says, when a devotee becomes mature, that he can do those things, have those realizations. And then remember, there's a past time where Narayan Prabhu asked Srila Prabhupada, can I ever become a pure devotee? And Prabhupada said, why not? You're doing the process. So this is the process to do that. We're doing it.
Yeah. And why not in this lifetime? That, how many times did he say that? Could take a lifetimes or like that. So.
All right, text 3. When Dhruva Maharaj saw his Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before him like a rod and became absorbed in love of God. Dhruva Maharaj, in ecstasy, looked upon the Lord as if he was drinking the Lord with his eyes, kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth, and embracing the Lord with his arms. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Naturally, when Dhruva Maharaj personally saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he was very much agitated in awe and respect, and it appeared as if he were drinking the entire body of the Lord with his eyes. The devotee's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so intense that he wants to kiss the lotus feet of the Lord constantly, and he wants to touch the tips of the toes of the Lord and constantly embrace his lotus feet. All these features of Dhruva Maharaj's bodily expression indicate that upon seeing the Lord eye to eye, he developed the 8 kinds of transcendental ecstasy in his body. Text 4. Although Dhruva Maharaj was a small boy, he still wanted to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in suitable language. But because he was inexperienced, he could not adjust himself immediately. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, could understand Dhruva Maharaj's awkward position. Out of his causeless mercy, he touched his conch shell to the forehead of Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Every devotee wants to chant the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Devotees are always interested in hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and they are always eager to glorify these qualities, but sometimes they feel inconvenienced by humbleness. The personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, specifically gives a devotee intelligence to describe him. It is therefore understood that when a devotee writes or speaks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is dictated by the Lord from within. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, To those who constantly engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord from within dictates what to do next in order to serve him. When Dhruva Maharaj felt hesitant, not knowing how to describe the Lord for want of sufficient experience, the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead, and he was transcendently inspired. This transcendental inspiration is called Brahmamaya, because when one is thus inspired, the sound he produces exactly corresponds to the sound vibration of the Vedas. This is not the ordinary sound vibration of this material world. Therefore, the sound vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra, although presented in the ordinary alphabet, should not be taken as mundane or material. Right.
Hmm.
And of course, if you go out in Sankirtan enough, you learn this happens because people approach you and they have certain questions and you're able to answer them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
of course, you're reading every day in Prabhupada's books when you're out in Sankirtan, and you know, and practically, whatever you read is kind of pertinent to whatever happened that day. A lot of cases happens.
Yeah, because it's not just like two-dimensional knowledge, like mechanical knowledge. It's tapping into a living source. The source is alive. The source is living. And so, like when you say you're on Sankirtan, you meet somebody, you're tapped in. You're plugged in. It's not that you just memorized verses or you're repeating, like a dull-headed, like a parrot or something, which is all right, but it's more than that. It's like, because the devotee is relishing and is plugged in and feeling the juice running through them, and when they speak, it comes out. It's like, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's like the honey jar. The jar is open and they've tasted the honey. So it's not like they're just looking at the person who is being preached to, is totally neophyte, knows nothing. But a lot of times it, it's the enthusiasm too, of the preacher that gets them to actually take a book, because they see, wow, what is this? Why is this person is really alive?
I want what they have. What's making them like
Exactly.
that? I want some of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're out there all day, the whole time, I I thought I was seeing that you have the life of a devotee in the temple. The temple and the association of devotees, but a Sankirtan devotee is actually more out than in the temple. He's more out there, and you start seeing that there's a whole society of devotees that Krishna and Srila Prabhupada within the heart are directing. Like, it's like a parallel society to temple life that's going on. That these people are devotees, because that's in essence everyone's a servant of Krishna, and you just start seeing Krishna is really busy. Making devotees too. Just you're out there and you're getting to observe and help, because even if they don't see devotees, you can tell something's going on. That Krishna in the heart's preparing them to be devotees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like I said, it just seems like there's a lot more going on out there than just you being this devotee. You're doing Sankirtan, and Krishna's coming. You see Krishna, you start seeing things like the whole atmosphere and the people coming around. You start seeing Krishna's really busy making devotees. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but you get that feeling there's a parallel movement other than the temple society out there that's Sankirtan, and a lot's going on.
Yeah, you're in.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Krishna
A
said,
lot.
like you'll meet somebody from Minnesota. You're standing on a corner in New York City and says, "Oh, I've been looking for you. I need these books, and you know, I've been buying these books for 10 years." And I go, "Well, which temples have you been to?" "I've never been to a temple, but this is my spiritual master." It's like, you know. Do you
Yeah,
know if Prashad?
and when you throw in the online activity, it's really heating up. It is all over, everywhere. Buyer beware, because you're not sure who's saying what, where it came from. But it's a flurry of activity. Hare Krishna, kirtans, books, and online. Everything's online, and all this interaction, the Zooms, the video chats.
That's
It's really
great.
heating up.
Well,
Even
I'll tell you what made me feel that way is that if you're out there all the time, you start meeting these people that have never been to a temple, and they've spent years only meeting Sankirtan devotees. And mostly they've never had prasadam. They don't even know what it is. But they're already like surrendered. Prabhupada's my spiritual. And in their own way, they don't know how to practice properly, but in their own way, they're on their way. And
What I'm seeing, maybe, it's a little foggy still because I'm trying to get some clarity, is that temple and temple service is really Brahminical stuff. But not everyone's a Brahmin.
yeah. No, most aren't.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's more going on than what's in the temple, but goodness sake, without the temples, nothing would make any sense. Without, temple
Of
worship and
course.
deity worship, either in the home, a home temple or a big temple, nothing would make any sense without, that kind of worship to go on. But not everybody's a Brahmin, and there's some really wonderful devotees who are, street sweepers and, hairdressers and whatever they are, and they don't have to become a temple devotee to be a devotee.
Yeah, and it seemed like I remember meeting people. They're just like they're very happy knowing this person, Prabhupada, who writes these books, that this is the most important thing, and that's good enough for them. And then they do, whatever their varna is. There's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but for the preaching, there have to be Brahmins and there has to be temples if there's going to be
Well, of course.
preaching.
Yeah, I mean, not that one's better than the other. It's just that you see something else going on, that it's going on in spite of temples. It's like, they don't even know there's a temple.
Sometimes it's like that in spite of temples.
Yeah.
Sometimes
it's like it's just like I was amazed that these people, they've never been to a temple. They're getting this advanced just from the books. That's New York City. You run into a lot of people. So.
okay. On to the your turn, Prabhu.
My turn?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's text 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jai Srila Prabhupada. At that time, Dhruva Maharaj became perfectly aware of the Vedic conclusion and understood the absolute truth and his relationship with all living entities. In accordance with the line of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, whose fame is widespread, Dhruva, who in the future would receive a planet which would never be annihilated, even during the time of dissolution, offered his deliberate and conclusive prayers. Purport. So, kind of long one. Jai Srila Prabhupada. There are many important items to be considered in this verse. First of all, the relationship between the absolute truth and the relative material and spiritual energies is here understood by a student who has complete knowledge of the Vedic literature. Dhruva Maharaj never went to any school or academic teacher to learn Vedic conclusion, but because of his devotional service to the Lord, as soon as the Lord appeared and touched his forehead with his conch shell, automatically the entire Vedic conclusion was revealed to him. That is the process of understanding Vedic literature. One cannot understand it simply by academic learning. The Vedas indicate that only to one who has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, as well as the spiritual master, is the Vedic conclusion revealed. The example of Dhruva Maharaj is that he engaged himself in devotional service to the Lord according to the order of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. As a result of his rendering such devotional service with great determination and austerity, the personality of Godhead personally manifested himself before him. Dhruva was only a child. He wanted to offer nice prayers to the Lord, but because he lacked sufficient knowledge, he hesitated. But by the mercy of the Lord, as soon as the Lord's conch shell touched his forehead, he became completely aware of the Vedic conclusion. That conclusion is based on proper understanding of the difference between Jiva and Paramatma, the individual soul and the supersoul. The individual soul is forever a servant of the supersoul, and therefore his relationship with the supersoul is to offer service. That is called Bhakti Yoga or Bhakti Bhav. Dhruva Maharaj offered his prayers to the Lord not in the way of impersonalist philosophers, but as a devotee. Therefore, it's clearly said here, Bhakti Bhav. The only prayers worth offering are those offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose reputation is spread far and wide. Dhruva Maharaj wanted to have the kingdom of his father, but his father refused even to allow him to get on his lap. In order to fulfill his desire, the Lord had already created a planet known as the pole star, Dhruvaloka, which was never to be annihilated even at the time of the dissolution of the universe. Dhruva Maharaj attained this perfection not by acting hastily, but by patiently executing the order of his spiritual master. Therefore, he became so successful that he even saw the Lord face to face. Now, he was further enabled by the causeless mercy of the Lord to offer fitting prayers to the Lord. To glorify or offer prayers unto the Supreme, one needs the Lord's mercy. One cannot write to glorify the Lord unless one is endowed with his causeless mercy.
Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. I love that term, which is just so quintessential to Krishna consciousness, causeless mercy. It's like after you've practiced for some time, you understand exactly, you have examples of what that causeless mercy is.
What I was thinking about recently in terms of like studying the Vedas, because it's called, revealed knowledge. So, like here Prabhupada's saying it's not by academic learning, but one who has faith in the Lord and the spiritual master, the conclusions are revealed. I was thinking about how, like, my experience is that I'm reading and I'm hearing these things, but I don't have much revelation on them sometimes, some things over the years, especially when I first read them. It was like, wow, that's really far out, but that's over there somewhere and I'm here, But then what happens is, in life, you start to get experiences. And then it's revealed. It's like the scriptures, they correlate with what you're experiencing. It's like they support. Oh yeah, this is the truth. I just experienced such and such. And that, like in dealing with someone or something, a personality or whatever, it's like, it's revealed. That it's revealed by you're experiencing it. So, it's not something that you have to memorize and learn so much. It's as you go through life, if you accept this as the truth, then it's revealed to you that it is the truth.
Yeah, no, that was nicely put. I mean, that's the difference between two, like material and spiritual. Like, and if you're really serious about your spiritual life, and you work a process, and Prabhupada gave us a perfect process, then if we follow that, yes, the revelations come. It's not like when you're saying, you read a purport. I mean, I read and it's like, I don't know how much I absorb. That's why I'm constantly just listening over and over and over and over to the same lecture. But when the time comes, like you say, it's like all of a sudden this revelation. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. I just a couple days ago, I had a revelation about Srila Prabhupada, how he said about, like Prabhu brings this up a lot. When you devotees came to him back in the 60s, 70s, he didn't want you to associate with the family anymore. Like he wanted that break and for to go fully into the spiritual life and the detachment. And I don't know, it was like all of a sudden it really hit me. He knows everything. He understands. It's not, you could say, oh, somebody could say, oh, that's very cult like. They're trying to get you away from your family and your friends. But no, we're talking about the material platform and we're talking about the spiritual platform. He was taking the devotees higher. And so, it was a perfect thing to do if you could do it.
Plus, there's no loss.
What? Huh?
I mean, you were lucky you had. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here somewhere.
Yeah, but you had your mom who engaged. There were some parents who would actually, disown their kids or whatever.
Well, even in India, where families are actually Krishna conscious to one degree or another, when the children need to be students and they need to study, they need to go to the school of the spiritual master.
Mm-hmm.
And they need some training. So Prabhupada asked for children in India. Nobody would give him any of their children.
Yeah, right.
So he came to the West, and the children were kind of big, but they were very immature and they were lost. So all right, so my students are, in their teens and 20s. Okay, come on, kids. You need to go to school.
Yeah. That's nice. Okay. So I think we'll go on to text 6. Dhruva Maharaj said, "My dear Lord, you are all powerful. After entering within me, you have enlivened all my sleeping senses, my hands, legs, ears, touch sensation, life force, and especially my power of speech. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you." Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaj could understand very easily the difference between his condition before and after attaining spiritual realization and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He could understand that his life force and activities had been sleeping. Unless one comes to the spiritual platform, his bodily limbs, mind, and other facilities within the body are understood to be sleeping. Unless one is spiritually situated, all his activities are taken as a dead man's activities or ghostly activities. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has composed a song in which he addresses himself. O living, O living entity, get up. How long shall you sleep on the lap of Maya? Now you have the opportunity of possessing a human form of body. Now try to get up and realize yourself. The Vedas also declare, get up, get up. You have the opportunity, the boon of the human form of life. Now realize yourself. These are the Vedic injunctions. Dhruva Maharaj actually experienced that upon enlightenment of his senses on the spiritual platform. He could understand the essence of Vedic instruction, that the Supreme Godhead is the Supreme Person. He is not impersonal. Dhruva Maharaj could immediately understand this fact. He was aware that for a very long time he was practically sleeping, and he felt the impetus to glorify the Lord according to the Vedic conclusion. A mundane person cannot offer any prayer or glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he has no realization of the Vedic conclusion. When Dhruva Maharaj therefore found this difference within himself, he could immediately understand that it was because of the causeless mercy of the Lord. He offered obeisances to the Lord with great respect and reverence, completely understanding that the Lord's favor was upon him. The spiritual enlivenment of Dhruva Maharaj's senses, mind, etc., was due to the action of the internal potency of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, the word svadhamna means by spiritual energy. Spiritual enlightenment is possible by the mercy of the spiritual energy of the Lord. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is first addressed to the spiritual energy of the Lord Hari. The spiritual energy acts when a living entity fully surrenders and accepts his position as an eternal servitor. When a person places himself at the disposal or order of the Supreme Lord, that is called Sevanmukha. At that time, the spiritual energy gradually reveals the Lord to him. Without revelation by the spiritual energy, one is unable to offer prayers glorifying the Lord. Any amount of philosophical speculation or poetic expression by mundane persons is still considered to be the action and reaction of the material energy. When one is actually enlivened by the spiritual energy, all his senses become purified and he engages only in the service of the Lord. At that time, his hands, legs, ear, tongue, mind, genitals, everything engage in the service of the Lord. Such an enlightened devotee no longer has any material activities, nor has he any interest in being materially engaged. This process of purifying the senses and engaging them in the service of the Lord is known as bhakti, or devotional service. In the beginning, the senses are engaged by the direction of the spiritual master and Shastra, and after realization, when the same senses are purified, the engagement continues. The difference is that in the beginning, the senses are engaged in a mechanical way, but after realization, they are engaged in spiritual understanding. Wow, this is a great purport. This is like, talk about um, a description of bhakti yoga. And then when he was like, and this is known as bhakti or devotional service, it was like, whoa, that was great. Oh.
Text. My Lord, you are the Supreme One, but by your different energies, you appear differently in the spiritual and material worlds. You create the total energy of the material world by your external potency. And after creation, you enter within the material world as the Supersoul. You are the Supreme Person, and through the temporary modes of material nature, you create varieties of manifestation, just as fire, entering into wood of different shapes, burns brilliantly in different varieties. Purport was Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaj realized that the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, acts through his different energies, not that it becomes void or impersonal, and thus becomes all-pervading. The Mayavadi philosopher thinks that the absolute truth being spread throughout the cosmic manifestation has no personal form. But here Dhruva Maharaj, upon realization of the Vedic conclusion, says, you are spread all over the cosmic manifestation by your energy. This energy is basically spiritual, but because it acts in the material world temporarily, it is called Maya, or illusory energy. In other words, for everyone but the devotees, the Lord's energy acts as external energy. Dhruva Maharaj could understand this fact very nicely, and he could understand also that the energy and the energetic are one and the same. The energy cannot be separated from the energetic. The identity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the feature of Paramatma or Supersoul is admitted herein. His original spiritual energy enlivens the material energy, and thus the dead body appears to have life force. Voidist philosophers think that under certain material conditions, symptoms of life occur in the material body. But the fact is that the material body cannot act on its own. Even a machine needs a separate energy, electricity, steam, etc. It is stated in this verse that the material energy acts in varieties of material bodies, just as fire burns differently in different wood, according to the size and quality of the wood. In the case of devotees, the same energy is transformed into spiritual energy. This is possible because the energy is originally spiritual and not material. As it is said, Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta, the original energy inspires a devotee, and thus he engages all his bodily limbs in the service of the Lord. The same energy as external potency engages the ordinary non-devotees in material activities for sense enjoyment. We should mark the difference between Maya and Svadhamma. For devotees, the Svadhamma acts, where in the case of non-devotees, the Maya energy acts. Right.
It's so important to hear this over and over and over again. It's so important because nothing else makes any sense until you actually can have some realization that you're not the body, that you're spirit soul, to try to go, into the pastimes, and, that's kind of fun, but it's not, you can't really get there without this. This is like the foundation. So it's so important to just keep hearing it, because we forget. I know I forget. I've been hearing it for over 50 years, and this is like, oh wow, this is new and fresh,
Well, this is like the benediction Drupa got, because we're all illiterate, spiritually, and this Dhruva, the Supreme Lord touched him on the floor with the conch shell. So here's that same conch shell here in these books. It's just written down, because in Kali Yuga our minds don't collect like that, like Dhruva's did. In general, some do, some rare persons, but here they are, right here. It's written down.
Wow, that's interesting to compare the conch shell because of the transcendental sound to the books, the conch shell.
Because it's given conclusion to him, and that's what these books are doing. Same thing. And we haven't performed the austerities that we can't in this age, that Dhruva Maharaj did. But it's said in, it's like in the 12th canto where Parikshit Maharaj is declaring that this age is better than any other age, because you can attain perfection just by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And so here's that perfection right here in these books.
Inconceivable mercy, just inconceivable. I guess we have some time, right? We'll do one more.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Harry.
Text 8. So this is Dhruva. He's continuing here. Now, he's only 5 years old, so it's awesome. Oh, my master, Lord Brahma is fully surrendered unto you. In the beginning, you gave him knowledge, and thus he could see and understand the entire universe, just as a person awakens from sleep and visualizes his immediate duties. You are the only shelter of all persons who desire liberation. You are the friend of all who are distressed. How, therefore, can a learned person who has perfect knowledge ever forget you? Don't ask. We're being reminded. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be forgotten, even for a moment, by his surrendered devotees. The devotee understands that the Lord's causeless mercy is beyond his estimation. He cannot know how much he is benefited by the grace of the Lord. The more a devotee engages himself in devotional service of the Lord, the more encouragement is supplied by the energy of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that to those who are constantly engaged in devotional service, love, affection, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives intelligence from within, and thus they make further progress. Being so encouraged, the devotee can never forget at any moment the personality of Godhead. He always feels obliged to him for having achieved increased power in devotional service by his grace. Saintly persons like Shaunaka, Sanatana, and Lord Brahma were able to see the entire universe by the mercy of the Lord through knowledge of the Lord. The example is given that a person may apparently abstain from sleep all day, but as long as he is not spiritually enlightened, he's actually sleeping. He may sleep at night and perform his duties in the daytime, but as long as he does not come to the platform of working in spiritual enlightenment, he's considered to be always sleeping. A devotee, therefore, never forgets the benefit derived from the Lord. The Lord is addressed here as Artabandhu, which means friend of the distressed. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, after many, many births of executing severe austerities in search of knowledge, one comes to the point of real knowledge, becomes wise when one surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mayavadi philosopher who does not surrender unto the Supreme Person is understood to be lacking in real knowledge. The devotee in perfect knowledge cannot forget his obligation to the Lord at any moment. Every purport is it's a feast.
We can do that just by loving Prabhupada. It's so easy to love Prabhupada that the obligation we have, we feel indebted to him,
Yeah. I remember at Prabhupada Sankirtan Society, there were complaints from some that came there, and they didn't like the fact that Kapindra Maharaj was constantly speaking about Prabhupada. And, it was like, what about Krishna? Well, who's giving Krishna? It's Prabhupada. So, I have to say for myself, it was so easy to love Prabhupada. He is the spiritual master of the movement. He hadn't left this planet so long ago. We were watching videos, reading his books, just constantly hearing him. So his voice was so familiar. He was spiritually present. And so it was such a easy, he could talk about Krishna and you could completely accept it all and love him because you loved Prabhupada. I mean, it is sort of, Prabhu knows, Prabhupada Sankirtan Society was it was like really, really, well, how would you describe it? Not strict. What word do I want? It was really all about Prabhupada, but giving Krishna. And it was a great way, I think, too. I'm glad I was trained up that way.
It was a regular temple with a morning and evening program. So Krishna was there, the deities were there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. The deities
read from
were
Prabhupada's
incredible.
books. There was an emphasis on Prabhupada because
he was a real Prabhupada man.
Because that emphasis was kind of like lacking in those days.
Yeah, well, actually, yes, because there was the big Brooklyn Temple, and you had the unauthorized gurus and devotees. It was just so few of the real Prabhupada Nugas. But, anyway.
Yeah, it's a challenge because it's service and separation. Like Krishna never really left Vrindavan.
Right.
But they were fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna and remembering Krishna, and Krishna was there, like that. So it is a kind of service and separation.
Mm-hmm. You want to read one more?
Do we have time?
Yeah, why not?
One more.
Belented.
What one is it? I've got lost already.
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay. Okay, that's not. Okay, it's not a big long one. All right.
No, no.
The big long ones are like when Prabhupada starts beating up on the Mayavadis. Every opportunity he takes, he takes a swing.
Yeah. I know. It's great.
Yeah, it's in his pranams.
Okay, text 9. Dhruva's continuing these beautiful prayers. He says, persons who worship you simply for the sense gratification of this bag of skin are certainly influenced by your illusory energy. In spite of having you, who are like a desire tree, and are the cause of liberation from birth and death. Foolish persons, such as me, desire benedictions from you for sense gratification, which is available even for those who live in hellish conditions. Prabhupada's purport. Dhruva Maharaj repented because he had come to the Lord to render devotional service for material profit. He here condemns his attitude. Only due to gross lack of knowledge does one worship the Lord for material profit or for sense gratification. The Lord's like a desire tree. Anyone can have whatever he desires from the Lord, but people in general do not know what kind of benediction they should ask from him. Happiness derived from the touch of skin or sensuous happiness is present in the life of hogs and dogs. Such happiness is very insignificant. If a devotee worships the Lord for such insignificant happiness, he must be considered devoid of all knowledge.
I feel the Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
That was a great session.
Oh,
Such
yeah.
care.
See, this is Prabhupada. We're hearing from him. We're associating with Prabhupada. And this pleases Prabhupada. He said one time, all the book scores were coming in, and it was in the heyday of, everybody going out and telling anybody anything just to get them to take a book. And Prabhupada said, but, are you reading these books?
Right. Everybody's distributing. Were they reading them?
Are you reading them?
Yeah.
I wrote them for you. This is Prabhupada. We're associating with hearing from Prabhupada. He's here. He says, I'm in my books. Here's Prabhupada. And like you were saying, Brahma, a few minutes ago, people that, have never been to a temple, nothing, they read Prabhupada's books and Hare Krishna.
Yeah, they surrender.
Yeah, and they're looking for more books.
Yeah.
And they already know this is nobody told, maybe somebody told him that he was a great spiritual master. They just figured it out by reading his books that, this is my spiritual master. This is the greatest spiritual master.
They never heard anything like this before.
They don't even know any spiritual masters, but they say, okay, this is the greatest one. I was amazed that I remember one woman, I'd seen her before. She wanted to give me $20 for a Bhagavad Gita. She said, this is my last $20. And I go, whenever I see you guys, I get a Bhagavad Gita. And I go, well, I don't want to take your last $20. So just take a Bhagavad Gita. And she goes, no, Krishna will give it back to me unlimitedly. And I go, wow.
Yeah.
Never been to the temple. Didn't know what prasadam was. Been buying Bhagavad Gitas for years.
Which means that they're not doing a regimented program under different rules and regulations. They're not doing that. So it's more spontaneous for them. They're getting more spontaneous.
Because of that, Krishna's giving them some mercy. They're not committing offenses. They got a way of life that if they went to the temple, they commit offenses.
What's sinful activity is very bad, especially meat eating. That's the worst. If they're eating meat, they can't understand anything. But worse than sinful activity is offenses. That's worse.
So he's giving all these malechas full of sinful activities love for Prabhupada. That's like.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, Ellen's got it. She's got it. She loves Prabhupada. She's hooked.
Yeah, it'll work. It'll work its magic. It's gone in. She's been infected. It'll work its magic.
Yeah.
Could take a while, but
Yeah. Anyway, well, that was good. We're lucky. We're lucky this was on Monday or Tuesday, because now we're